All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another fun-filled fusion video. Really glad to have you all here. It would be better if you came to youth group and I saw you in person. We're doing that Sundays 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Be there or be a square because you're not around. Anyway, be there. Come out, hang out with me from a safe distance. It'll be great. Honestly, it would be really great to see you guys again. But, yeah, please come. So, we have been going through the Ten Commandments the last couple of weeks. Going through each one and kind of figuring out what each one means. We've covered no other gods but God, no carven images or graven images, depending on which translation you use. Do not use God's name in vain. We talked about remembering the Sabbath last week. This week we're going to be talking about honoring your parents. We've also talked about not coveting, and we've also talked about don't murder. So we're just moving our way right along these. But this week we're going to be talking about honoring your parents. So if you have your copy of the Word of God, we're going to be in Exodus 20. We're going to be looking at verse 12. And then, so Exodus 20:12, but then we're also going to go over to Ephesians 6, verses 1 through 3. So if you want to put your thumb there and then, or vice versa, whatever you want to do. But we're going to be reading in both those passages today. And so Exodus 20, verse 12, it says, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord is giving you." And then Ephesians, it says, yikes, there we go. In Ephesians, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and your mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth." So they're basically the same exact thing. The New Testament is basically a word-for-word quote of the Old Testament one. So why did they have to put it in two places? Well, don't know, but they did. A lot of the people that Paul might have been writing to, some of them were Gentiles. They might not have been familiar with the Jewish context, and they were just being reminded of it. However, this is a really cool thing that it does, because the Old Testament being written in Hebrew and New Testament being written in Greek, it can give us a fuller picture of what honoring our parents really means. And so we're going to be looking at that in a little bit. But before we start that, as always, it seems like with these videos, I want to look at the Jewish culture and what they kind of... So parents and family lines were a big deal. There's actually a part, and I believe it's in 1 Timothy, where Paul says, stop talking about genealogies. And it's because the Jewish people take pride in who they descend from. And so, there's a part where Jesus is talking to them, and, he's like, who are you of? And they're like, oh, our father is Abraham. And it's like, do you want a prize? Abraham had a lot of kids. So it's like, it's just really interesting because of that aspect of it. It's like they love family lines, and so to them this is a big deal. Genealogies are a big deal. Who you come from is a big deal. And so honoring your parents is part of that family line. That's why Jesus actually has two genealogies, one in the book of Matthew and one in the book of Luke. And it's because you needed to illustrate that Jesus was the son of David, came from a line of David, but also just the Jewish people in general really like genealogy. So including that in the Gospels was a really good thing for them, because it helps kind of paint the picture fuller for them. But that's kind of how the Jewish people were. They really cared about their family line and their genealogies. But we come into the modern context where we live today, and there's such a blatant lack of respect for the generations that have come before. And you guys might be sitting there going, but I love my grandma. Okay. But do you guys remember a trend that went along, and thank goodness it's over, where, the okay boomer memes? Like, those are so blatantly disrespectful, and I don't think anybody actually thinks about that fact. And it's like, you are literally, by saying okay boomer, just ignoring everything they've learned in their life, everything they've experienced, and it's just like, you have basically you've closed yourself off to learning anything from this person because you don't like what they have to say. And that is so annoying to me. And, I've seen disrespectful memes all the time. I saw one the other day that was like, my parents act like because they fed me like they're supposed to, that I should somehow respect them for that. Yes! As an adult, do you know how expensive it is to put groceries on the table? Do you know how expensive it is to have a baby? It's really expensive, okay? It's the fact that they kept you alive is an achievement. It's not necessarily that somehow them doing what they were supposed to do is what earns them respect. It's the fact that they were able to do it. The fact that your dad worked in order to do that. Your mother raised you. It's like, that is... Anyway, it just really got under my skin. And the okay boomer thing gets under my skin. And the worst part is it's a small sign of a greater problem. We as a society don't respect history anymore. And I know that there are some parts, when I was growing up, American history was very watered down. And the older I get, the more I realize, maybe America isn't as great as we thought it was. But at the same time, if I didn't know history, I would be missing a whole lot. There's literally a saying that says those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. We can learn from the mistakes of those in the past, and I feel like as a society, we just disqualify all of it nowadays. We are the most enlightened. We are the smartest people that have ever lived. We have technology that can do anything. But that's just not true. There are parts of me that wonder if Rome wasn't more culturally enlightened than we were at some parts. There are parts of me that wonder if the Great Enlightenment wasn't smarter than we are. All we're doing is being a cycle where a civilization rises and it does well for a while, and then all these people start coming in, changing and declaring all these things, and then it goes back down and it crashes, and then the next society rises, and it just keeps going like that forever. We are literally just in a cycle. That's all we do. As a society, as the world, as human beings, that's what we do. We create cycles. And that's why we need to know history so we can avoid falling into these cycles again. But the general populace seems to not care. And especially nowadays, it's just, no one has any respect anymore. And I know that's a soapbox, and I promise it does connect a little bit. But honoring our parents and honoring our history are very similar. And we need to make sure that we're being honoring of both. And so the modern context, in my opinion, is all out of whack as to how we respect people. And especially because we, as a society, think that if people don't agree with us, then they hate us. And that's just simply not true. It's not true. That's not how it works. The world is too gray sometimes for us to go, we disagree with me on this one thing, therefore this is the outcome. There's so many complexities to the human mind that to say that is arrogant and narrow-minded. And so, anyway, so back to our actual passage. We need to make sure that we are respecting our parents, right? And I wanted to make sure that we understood what this meant. So in the Hebrew, the word honor here, honor your father and your mother. The word honor is the word kabed. And it literally translates to heavy. And I literally went, what in the world does heavy my parents even mean? It's also in the PL form. So it doesn't just mean honor your parents. It's like, the simplest way to explain it is that the PL takes the word and puts it on steroids. So, for example, it's not he broke, it's he smashed. It's not he died, it's he perished. And so the PL form takes the word and puts it on steroids. And so when it says heavy your parents, it doesn't mean heavy your parents. It means heavy your parents. So yeah, that's that. And to kind of make sure we understand this a little bit further, what is the Greek word? Well, the Greek word is timeo. Timeo. And that means to honor, value, or price. And so, okay, so it has to do with value. Well, let's think about the old times, right? Before the American dollar, which isn't based off of anything, which history will tell you, it used to be based off of silver, and the dollar was more like a receipt. And so if you had a dollar, you could go to the bank and you could get that much silver out of it. Nowadays, it's not based off anything and will probably inevitably lead to the crash of civilization. But whatever. But the way they would do things back in the day was something was, worth its weight in gold. So it was the weight of something that determined the value of something. And so they'd put it in a scale with counterweights, and they'd weigh a rock or a precious metal, and depending on how much it weighed was how much it valued at. And so when it says to heavy your parents, it means to assign them the value that is due them. And I don't mean due them in the way of but I mean, it means assign them the value, give them value, because that's what they're worth. And it doesn't mean to just kind of do this, it means to do this. Remember we talked about the PL form. It's on steroids. We're not just observing their value, we are really observing their value. And another thing that's really interesting about this section, and because I asked the questions like, what does honoring really even mean? Because there was culture changes, and there was once upon a time where if you didn't bow to the king when you entered and then backed out of the room without turning your back to him, that you disrespected the king. There was once upon a time where when a gentleman would meet a lady, he would kiss her hand and be like, it's very nice to meet you, and that kind of stuff. And nowadays we would probably say that those are weird. And honestly, I'm kind of disappointed that some of those classier things have just disappeared. Why did we let our civilization descend into this? But we need to go back to being classier, ladies and gentlemen. So what does honoring mean nowadays? Well, thankfully, the Ephesians passage just lays it out. Like, it just straight up. It says to obey. It says to obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. So it's not just honor your parents as in you guys are cool. It's I am giving you the value that you deserve because I am obeying you. And so, that is the highest form of respect, when you do what someone tells you to do. And as children, teenagers or whatever, if they tell you to take out the trash, take out the trash. If they tell you to empty the dishwasher, empty the dishwasher. If they tell you to email your teacher because you have to take care of whatever, do that. That's not out of line for them to ask you to do that. And obeying them is a form of honoring them. And the thing that's really interesting about this commandment is that it is the first and the only commandment with a promise attached to it. And the promise is that you may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. In Exodus, it talks about that you may live long in the land that the Lord will give you. And so when we are honoring our parents, we're actually receiving a blessing from God, because when God gives a direct promise, he doesn't rescind that promise. God is not lazy concerning his promises. When he says he's going to do something, you better believe he's going to do it. He's done it 1,000 times over, and he's going to do it 1,000 times more. Maybe more than that. 1,000 is too small. God has made this promise. If we honor our parents, we are going to be blessed because of it. And so we need to make sure that we're honoring our parents, because not only are we honoring them, we are honoring God through that. And not only are we honoring God through that, we are in a way storing up blessing for ourselves. And I'm not saying that we need to do something because there's an incentive, a promise, but it helps, frankly, to know that if I honor my parents in this way, God will bless me for it. And that's really cool. And so, and I like how it says, in the Lord, for this is right. And so, we're honoring our parents, but we're also honoring the Lord by honoring our parents. And so it's this whole thing. And that's really cool to me. And so I do want to address the elephant in the room, because some people have really bad parents. Some people have abusive parents. Some people have unbelieving parents. And I'm aware of that. And honoring your mother and your father when they don't seem to have any value because of their choices can be very difficult. And I honestly was very nervous about discussing this portion because I have little to no experience with this. My parents have always taken me to church. Before I was even born, I was going to church. And, my parents were really good parents. I mean, they weren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they were good. And so when I'm sitting here reading this passage and I'm like, how do I address this? I decided I would interview other people, and I'm not going to say names or anything like that. I'm going to try to keep it as vague as possible for the sake of those people. But I tried to interview people I knew that had bad parents, unbelieving parents, or maybe even abusive parents. And basically the overall gist that I got was, especially with believers who have unbelieving parents, is that it's going to cause conflict. There is going to be a little bit of tension between you and your parents if you are an unbeliever. And that's just how it is, So one of the people I interviewed told me that, his mother one time yelled at him because he was judging her, but he hadn't actually said anything. It was more just being known as a Christian that intimidated her. And so because of that, that caused some tension between him and his parents. And, he said that he tried his best to make sure that he was understanding and that he was patient with them. And so dealing with unbelieving parents, I was given these a couple of different things. We need to make sure that we're sharing the gospel with them, because every person needs to know what Jesus has done. Every person needs to be aware that Jesus came to this earth, died on the cross for the sins of humanity, and then rose again, giving a way to beat death. Every person needs to be aware of this. So share the gospel, even when you don't want to. You need to be in prayer for them, because they are your parents. And only God can change their hearts. And you also need to be patient with them, because change doesn't happen in one day. Change happens over the course of many years. And I know the one individual did have a better relationship with his parents later on in his life. And another thing that I was told was, when you are, if you really want to start opening conversations with them to potentially share the gospel with them, one thing you can do is get back from youth group and just say, hey, can I teach you, or can I show you what I learned in youth group today? And, he was saying that may not be the perfect answer, but that is an option to opening those doors to have those conversations with them. And when it comes to bad or abusive parents or anything of that nature, I want to put out firstly that I am always available to be talked to. If you guys are in these situations and you need someone to know and you need someone to talk to and you need guidance for it, I'm there for you. Let me know. Text me, beep me if you want to reach me. But, text me, give me an email, call me, whatever it is. I want to be there for you guys. I will say, though, that if you tell me certain things, I am a mandated reporter by the state of Maryland. So if I hear something that needs to be reported, I'm going to have to report it. But that doesn't mean it should stop you guys from teaching or talking to me about it, okay? So I want to put that out there. I am there for you guys. Please talk to me about these things. You're not alone, okay? But the guidelines that I was given by this person was the same guidelines that we were given in the scripture when dealing with the government. And it's told that, God places authority over us, or authorities over us for particular purposes, and that these people are supposed to carry out God's laws, but sometimes they don't do that. And so I was given the outline of, if your parents are asking you to do something that is illegal, unbiblical, or unsafe for yourself or others, you have the right to not obey them. And so, yeah, when that is what is going on in your household, you can honor your parents anyway by following those guidelines. You can obey them unless it's illegal, unbiblical, or unsafe. Now, going back to what we were talking about with the value thing and assigning them value, it's like if you have parents that you feel have no value because they're bad parents or they're abusive to you or whatever, they do still have value in a way, because God gives all individuals intrinsic value in the same way that a painting is valuable because of the painter who wrote it or painted it. We have value as individuals because of our Creator. It's God's fingerprints on us that provide us with that value. Because of our own self, we have tainted, distorted, and sometimes even destroyed the image of God. And so we in ourselves are not valuable. Romans calls us unprofitable because of our sin. But God looked at us. He gave us value because of his work, of his creation. He also gave us value in the way that he gave his son for us. He redeemed us, and that was a way of buying us. And so when God looks at us, he counts the cost and says, these people, as sinful as they are, as unprofitable as they are my creation, and I'm going to save them. And through that, assigned us value. And so your parents, as terrible as they may be, as sinful as they may be, still have value that you should honor. And as I mentioned before, you honor them, or you honor God by honoring them. And so when you obey them in the little things, and that things that don't violate those rules I gave before, illegal, unbiblical, or unsafe, you honor God through that. And again, if you are in one of those situations, please come and talk to me. I am more than willing to listen. I'm more than willing to give advice. I also have training in counseling, and I'd be willing to work with you in that area as well. So let me know, guys. But overall, we need to make sure that our heart's in the right spot. As I've said many times, these commandments ultimately deal with the heart, not just the action. And, you can be grumbling the whole way that you're taking that trash out, but you need to make sure that your heart is in the right spot. You honor God by honoring your parents, by making sure that your heart is in the right place when they ask you to do something. And even if you have to go against something they've told you to do, if you have said, I can't do that because of this reason, and you do it in a way that is respectful, you have done nothing wrong, and whatever happens after that is on their head. And God has said that he is going to return everybody for the deeds that they have done. And so we need to make sure that we're praying for our parents, sharing the gospel with them, and being patient with them, and seeking, hopefully, that God will change their hearts and God will work in them. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope that it was educational and that it was helpful and edifying. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below, or text me, beat me if you want to reach me. I need to stop doing that. We also have a youth group Discord that if you're interested in getting on, we're doing question of the week on there. So I put a question out each week and then we discuss it over the course of the week. If you're interested in that, let me know. Text me, because I'm not sending that link out to the general public. That's not how this works. So like, subscribe, comment, whatever it is. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. And I look forward to seeing you guys in youth group. Come to youth group. Yeah, anyway. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next week with another video. Bye!